Okay, so in our next quick tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up a 0 point, or how to set up your stock in Fusion 360 for CAM purposes. Now, what I've got in this design over here is a 16mm board and a 32mm board, and I've just made them 200mm by 200mm squares. So the one's a bit thicker than the other, and it's just the purpose of the exercise. I just want to show you how to set up stock in order for it to make sense. So the first thing that we'll do when we want to set up stock and set up the 0 point, I just want to let you know that we basically use our front left point as a 0 point. But you could use any point depending on your machine and the layout that you use. It's similar to having a left-hand to right-hand drive vehicle. It's much of the same thing. It's a starting point. So basically it forms a registration point for the machine to say, okay, this is where we need to start, this is where the material is going to be, and this is where we're going to work from. If you set it up in a weird position somewhere, the machine will immediately move to that point. So to give you some sort of idea, we're just going to go into the manufacturing tab over here, and we're going to hit the setup folder. Now I've got my default setup done at 1830 by 2760, which is a standard 6x9 board. And we've got 16mm, we've got a 16mm thickness, and for this exercise we're going to just select that item, the 16mm board. So you'll notice that we don't have any errors over here. Offsets can be anything. I've got mine default at 4, but you can make it a little bit more if you like. So we just hit the OK button. So during that setup, you'll see this is a full 6x9 board, and you can see that from the side, you can see that it's a 16mm thickness, which means that the 32mm board won't fit. So anything that relating to the machining of this panel, if I chose this panel alongside this one in the setup, I can just do that for a second there, and I stick to the 16mm height, you're going to get these warning messages, okay, which basically says your material is 16mm thick, but the model itself is thicker than your material, which means it's an issue. So please keep in mind that your material's got to match your stock's got to match your material thickness. So you can't design something at 32mm and try and machine it out of 16mm, which is kind of obvious, but you might get those errors. You might not realize why. Now, this is based on a full sheet size. So what I'll do for now is I'll just create another setup of this item again. This item again. But in this case, I will say, okay, let's say we've got a 1.2 meter by 2.4 meter 16mm board. Again, smaller sheet size than that. But you get the idea. That would be a normal sheet size. Now, the other option would be to do an additional setup where you can actually select your model, and then on your tab say, instead of a fixed size box, which means that it's preset or prefabricated sort of sheet, a full sheet material, you can say it's a relative size box, which is basically sized to the size of your model itself that you want to machine. And we can do offsets here. You've got a top offset and a side offset. So we just added a 10mm side offset for now. The top offset is it looks like it's 1mm over here, yes. So we can just put that on a 0 to make sure that it fits nicely. And we hit the OK button. So now we've got 3 different setups basically. Got that one, which is a full sheet, smaller sheet, and just the actual piece of material that we want to do. Now, that's just the basic setup. Now, you can see that the y-axis goes from left to right top, left bottom to right top in this case, and then the x is this way across, and z is obviously up and down. So make sure that you match the y this way, the x this way, and the z up that way. Basically, the way that I would do that usually is just hit home. You've got front and right on the cube over here, which means that your x and y axis is in the right direction. Now, technically, you could set this up to be whichever direction you want, but I'm just going to show you quickly. We've set up the 0 point to be at the left bottom. So when you look at it from the top, we've got the 0 point at the left bottom of the actual model. But you could change the 0 point to anywhere you like, actually. So the machine will create its G code based on this being set as the starting point. So you'll notice that while we're setting up the machine, I'd bring the router bit down and I just make it touch the board, and I set on the machine I set 0, 0, 0 point Z, X, the Z, X and Y all set to 0 when it touches this corner there. Okay. Then when we create the G code basically says this is our starting point over here, and we'll work from this point. So we'll move towards wherever we need to go in order to cut whatever it is that we need to cut. So if you create a 0 point, for argument's sake, on the right top corner over here, and you set it up, the machine will want to move this way. So you've got to make sure that if it's set up this way, that you've got enough material towards the left and towards the bottom to accommodate your model. If you do it on the left top, the same rule applies. Make sure that you've got enough material towards the right and towards the bottom. And same goes for left bottom, right bottom. You can start from any corner depending on your machine and what feels comfortable for you. So as long as you understand that if I set this up as the 0 point, then the machine's going to work its way this way. If I set up the 0 point in the top right corner, it's going to work this way, and then the bottom right corner is going to work its way this way. So as long as you understand that you've got to have material in the direction that the machine is going to work. So in other words, I can't set up my 0 point in the top right and then zero it all the way to the left of the machine, where the machine won't have space to go towards the left or towards the bottom. The machine will want to do it, but you'll have your limiting switches or machine limits that'll kick in and throw out an error. Because the first thing the machine's going to assume is that there's plenty of space and the machine can go left as far as it needs to and go as far back and forward or whatever as needs to be. So the machine doesn't know its own limitations regarding the X and Y. That's why there are limit switches on the gantry, so that when the machine reaches its maximum point before it causes damage to the machine will actually stop. So to set up the 0 point, I mean, we could just duplicate this for a second, and then we can select that point over there, and we can still hit OK. Now what will happen is, on this file, if I 0 pointed there, I've got to make sure that there's enough space on the left and towards the front of the material or of the machine to machine this piece of material. So that one is a top right 0 point, and then this one is a bottom left. Now we use the bottom left 0 point on all our designs. So basically, if we load a machine, then we load the full sheet as we would here, and we 0 pointed from here. So we set up the machine, we 0 pointed over here, and we say, okay, we hit play, and then we know that the machine can move back on the gantry 3 meters, this is 2.7 meters, so the gantry can move all the way 2.7 meters this way, and it can move 1.8 meters that way before it reaches the limit of the machine. So to put things into perspective, let's say this yellow spot is the machine's actual bed. If I wanted to machine this block out from that corner over there, I could do it as long as the 0 point is set up to start over here, so that this part of material actually fits in. You don't want the machine to move this way and hit the limit switch, or move that way and hit the limit switch and then says, okay, it can't machine this part. I hope that makes sense. I think for the purpose of the exercise, let's just stick to the 0 point on the left top, left bottom, and then on the top of the actual material over here. That works best for us, and I think for most CNC machines that would be completely efficient. But if your machine is for some reason flipped the other way around, let's say your control unit's on the right hand side and it's easier to zero it on the right bottom, then basically you could do that by simply selecting your model, and selecting the point that you want to have your 0 point selected at. Okay, so that's based on a 16mm board. So for our next setup, we will do a 32mm board. So you can just say select this one on the models, and then we'll just have to turn this into 32mm and hit OK. Same thing again. We've got our machine set up, and that's basically it. We've got a nice 0 point over here, and that part is nicely worked in there, and there we go. So I think this makes perfect sense. You've got to make sure that you match the thickness of your material that you're going to be using. Now, if you were going to use a 36mm board, or let's say a 32mm board, but you want to do something a little bit, let's say 30mm thick or something, then you can still do that. What will happen is, if we say, let's say we've got material that is 40mm thick, or yeah, let's say 40mm thick. You'll notice that the material is a lot thicker now, and there are a lot of advanced settings that you can do. You can offset from the bottom. You can, I just want to see model offset is, should we put this on a 0 for now? 0 for now, and a 0 for now. There we go. That's exactly the look I wanted to get. So just set up 0, 0, 0 and say OK. All right. So we've got all these 0 offsets. Now you'll notice that the stock line is higher than this. So what the machine is going to assume is that this top line needs to be machined off. So the way that you would do that is, if you set up your path, you'll have to do a face clearance like this, and then simply select that face and hit the OK button. Select the tool that you want to use. Do this very quickly, and then the machine will then take the stock and then create a sort of just take off the entire top line of the stock. So I'm going to hit play and show you, give you an idea of, it'll take your material from 40mm down to 32mm on the design. So that's if you're using thicker stock. So if you, for argument's sake, are using 18mm MDF instead of 16mm, and you want to do the stock fit items, then you could always just plane off the top face of it to get it down to the thickness that you want. So it's just planing it off. But yeah, basically that is the 0 point. I hope it makes perfect sense. The next step, we'll go into our different paths or cut lines.